Hey, I'm Kenneth Wajda. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my LEICA Talks, all things LEICA. So today I'm going to talk about the first digital Leica I ever bought was the Leica M8. And I didn't buy it new. I bought it after it had been out for a few years and the price had significantly go down. If you're buying Leicas and you want to tie up some money, a Leica film camera, you won't lose any money, but a Leica digital, you will. This may have been $5,000 or $6,000 when it was new, but I bought it used for $1,500. And they had some issues with the Leica M8. It was an APS-C sensor, so it was a crop sensor. So if you put a 35 millimeter lens on it, it's effectively a 50 millimeter in full frame terms. So this is a low budget digital camera the way I started in Leica Digital. I got an M8. It came with a thumbs up, which is a brass, real high quality thumb holder grip. And that is a $100 item. So if you find somebody who has that and that's included, that's a bonus. Look for those accessories that somebody else already bought. It didn't come with a lens for $1,500. I just got the body. I was on a low budget. I went with a 35 millimeter lens, which is a Voigtlander 1.4, and they came in two coatings. They had a modern coating or a classic coating, and they said the classic coating had more of an older film feel, and I thought, that's okay, I'll just go with that. And it works great. I love the 35 1.4 Voigtlander lens on this camera. In fact, it lives on this camera. So essentially, I'm carrying around a digital 50 millimeter lens because of the crop sensor. Now, Leica had some issues with this camera because they didn't put an infrared filter in front of the sensor. And what happened was, if you're shooting color with it and you shoot somebody wearing a black shirt, in color it might look pink or magenta. And it wasn't pink or magenta, it was black. So they would give away filters that would cut the infrared light so that you wouldn't get that effect. And they had a program where they were giving out infrared cut filters because their camera didn't filter out that well. Now, if you're shooting black and white, it doesn't matter. In fact, this is probably the best Leica monochrome budget camera because I often will use it just for a black and white camera. And if you're shooting black and white, that filter situation isn't an issue. Put a 35 1.4 Voigtlander lens on it. That lens is only a $400 lens new. I think I paid $300 or $250 used for it. Remember, I never buy anything new. I never buy anything unless it's a decent price and it kind of comes into my world that it's available. I'm never one to say, I want it now, I'm going to go get it, because then you pay full price. But that 35 1.4, that works great with the Leica M8. The other thing about the M8 is it doesn't have a modern CMOS sensor, it has a CCD sensor, which a lot of people have raved about the quality, but it's not a good low light camera. So you really can't put this camera much past ISO 640 or 800. But you can shoot 640 or 800. And with a 1.4 lens, you can do a lot with that. People always talk about the limitations and why they need the later one, but 800 speed film was a really fast film back in the film days, and you can do a lot with that. Do not think that because it doesn't have a sensor that can go to 25,000 and 64,000 that you can't shoot with this. You can. And because it's a rangefinder, you can hold the camera a little bit steadier, probably get away with a 15th of a second inside at night. But the M8, I think, is one of the bargains right now if you're looking for an inexpensive monochrome digital camera or a color one, but you have to pick up those filters to cut the infrared. And if you don't, this is the infrared cut filter. The issue was that you would need one for every lens that you bought. And if you didn't get one of those, then you would end up with a lens that would turn your, it's like black fabric especially was the one thing. I remember a friend with a black shirt and his shirt was magenta in the picture. But it's definitely a worthwhile system. I wouldn't pay a lot for it. I would think you should be able to pick these up. This was years ago. I got that for $1,500. I think you should be able to pick those up for $1,200. And if you can get somebody to throw in some accessories like a thumbs up or a lens, maybe it's a Voigtlander lens, maybe it's a Nikkor lens. If you can get that, that's a good little setup. And the biggest thing about these is the battery life isn't always the greatest in batteries that are aged. So you'll want to get a few extra batteries. LEICA batteries are really expensive, but if you buy aftermarket, they can be a little bit iffy. So you have to weigh, how much do I want to chance? Maybe I need to buy 3 or 4 of the iffy ones to make sure I have one that works, or a couple that work, or trust these off-brand ones versus the LEICA one. The off-brand ones may be $15 and the LEICA one might be $180. I probably would buy 3 or 4 of the off-brand ones and get them charged up and get them going. I also don't think those batteries like to sit very long. Like if you don't use it for 3 weeks, sometimes the battery will say full and then I'll go out and shoot it and it'll die right away. So be aware that the battery issue, I really wish LEICA would listen to me and just put an advance on the digital cameras so that we can shoot a digital shot, use the electronics you need to capture the photograph, which isn't very much electricity, and then let us do the mechanical winding so that we don't need a motor inside to use the battery. That battery would last so much longer. I've always wished that they would create a hand crank for resetting the shutter on a LEICA digital, but they haven't so far. Maybe someday. LEICA, are you listening? Anyway, the LEICA M8, I highly recommend it for digital. Like I said, for black and white and for color with the infrared filter. And I certainly think that you can do, it's much more the photographer than the camera. This camera can do plenty of good work in both color and black and white. I've photographed a movie behind the scenes campaign with this. I photographed movie stills with it in black and white. I've done a lot of black and white work with it. I find it to be a very, very capable camera, and it's inexpensive from the point of view of shooting a LEICA digital. If you want to shoot digital, shoot LEICA. If you have some other lenses, it gets all those lenses available into your digital world, and it gives you a way to be able to create photos that maybe don't warrant your film use. That's what digital is good for. All right, that's today's photography talk, the LEICA M8. I welcome your comments. If you're enjoying these, hit the subscribe button, and I'll be back next time. We'll talk more LEICA photography. As always, here's the good light.